line also, the president actually named it and say a rest agenda for inclusive development.
Okay.
So that means that we are bringing inclusive planning and development together to ensure that we have inclusive implementation of this development plan. Important in the discussion is that there will be no way you plan your population without understanding, the dynamics in terms of its growth, the composition, how many women, how many girls, the age, youth, and other all of these things. So first of all, you need to have it, available before you do a national development plan. The plan, in as much as you are looking at infrastructure and the rest of the thing, the purpose of planning is to improve quality of life, and that is tied to population. So the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning is responsible to do the planning, and we are looking at what type of data. And it's a good question you ask. We have our census data. We have other data that we have actually used as a country, and these are the area that we will be focusing on. And besides the population data we have, we also have a sectorial data that will be fed into the sectorial plan that will be incorporated in the national development plan. And as a country, we need to be looking at the baseline that we have right now in our planning process to say, for example, we're talking about the health sector. What's the baseline that we have for maternal mortality, which is one of the great things. As we said, President Barker will always ask that question: how many women actually losing their life daily as a result of giving birth? And therefore, we say, with that, we are around 700,000. Can we reduce that to say in the next 5 years, how do we reduce the maternal mortality rate? The planning department is actually collating almost all of this information, and our consulting along with all the experts, including those of us who are in the ministry who have the background in demography and economics. We're looking at the numbers. So therefore, it's very much important. We need it every day. In fact, as Minister Gaffon was saying, the macroeconomic stability of a nation, you cannot have it without data. So therefore, you want to know how the economy is growing in terms of your inflation rate and everything. These are data that are required. So it's important that before you make a plan for the country, you know where you are in terms of your statistics, and you should make sure that you have a quality and very informative data to be analyzed. The next thing about our planning process is that we want to Liberia, as we are going through this 2025 to 2029 planning process. I can tell you that it is challenging, but it's an opportunity to see whether the leadership of President Joseph Newman Boakai will be giving history to the global world and also giving history to Liberia. What I mean by this, simple. We have the Liberia National Vision 2030, and we have the Global Vision 2030. There are gaps in the implementation of these two national and global development, and therefore President Boakai have the responsibility to roll out the constraints and the gaps we have in the implementation in meeting some of the targets. And we cannot make this decision without knowing where we are in terms of our statistics, in terms of our data. So therefore, it's very much important. In fact, we have asked all the partners, the UN, the development partner, the World Bank, the bilateral partner, including the USAID, every partner we ask, African Development Bank, we say all hands on deck, because
to make available these data.
To make available data, and also join us to do this planning together. The civil society, the private sector. And the reason there is that without adequate information, without adequate data, we cannot achieve our target in the next 5 years. Let me just give another example. We're talking about the environment. It's very much challenging as we speak in Liberia. At global level, we realize that climate change is no longer, a theory. It's a reality that we got to face. And where we are in terms of the fight against, the degradation around the community, you see the environmental change. You can see it clearly. How many homes can be affected? We need all of these data to do our forecasting to see in terms of disaster response. What should we put in the plan? How much will be costing annually? How many infrastructure we lose? How many lives we lose if we have a rainfall today? There's a flood in Monrovia. These are things we are preparing for to see how best we can capture in our planning process. And most importantly, let me say this to you. Many people talk about development always, they focus on more the macroeconomic side and the quantitative number of GDP. We want to see President Banker administration is taking the Liberian Human Development Index. These are the cardinal thing in development we need to look at really. We are saying Liberia is below the standard in terms of Human Development Index. We are below 5.5. We are 0.48 indicators. And that point, we are thinking in the next 5 to 6 years, how can we improve the number for Liberian to say that, look, we have improved the living standard of our people. So these are the main targets we're going to be looking at, and that's a challenge this administration is faced with. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, I will come to you, Peter, but let me come back to you, Gafon. When are we going to see the Liberian government itself conducting its own statistics and coming up with its own data to match with the international partners, say for example UNFPA? Because people have complained that there is likelihood of a mismatch or a gap between the partners' data and the Liberian government-owned data. When are we going to see that?
The first thing is that the UNFPA doesn't have its own data. Exactly. UNFPA, but the data that is used by the UNFPA is the Liberian people data collected by LISGIS.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. So that is the correction. So
a lot of people don't know.
That is it. And in fact, most of the development partners use data collected by whether LISGIS or other agencies within the national statistical system.
Okay.
And if you're talking about the GDP numbers, they depend upon the national accounts statistics from LISGIS. If you're talking about inflation rates that have been used for various forms of economic analysis, even by the CBL, it is from LISGIS, and even the IMF and the World Bank tend to use data collected by LISGIS. So let us first work upon that premise.
So establish that.
So it is the Liberian people data collected by LISGIS. Yeah.
I was asking Gafon, what happens to the data collected from UNFPA and standpoint? What do you do with them?
So thank you. And I think I just want to sort of reiterate what the DG has said. There is no UN data. It is all the government's data owned by the government of Liberia. But I think how all development partners, any development partner relies on this government data to use it to inform our own programs and our own policies, right? The government, for example, once they've got this data now, and as they're doing the National Development Plan, we know that we've been speaking to many ministries, we've been speaking with LISGIS. I think there's a request that maybe we need to update the population policy, right? Liberia needs to update its own population policy because the last one is dated. So that is a request from the government itself. Then the UN comes in and supports. From the Ministry of Youth and Sports, the Minister of Youth is interested in updating the national youth policy. And all of this new data that is being generated is actually going to inform the policy. The previous policy, if it's 10 years old, is based on data that was generated 10 years ago. You now have new data, and this is the time to update the policy. Once these policies are updated by the government, then the development partners, whether it's the UN or civil society partners or development partners, all of us will sort of work along with the government to design programs that are aligned with the policies and that leverage this data that the government has used. In addition, I would say that data is not just a one-time thing, right? I think as you implement your programs, the importance of tracking progress is crucial. So you have a baseline. Today, let's say with the census we have a baseline, and you should be able to track from our progress, working with LISGIS, how programs are doing. What is the progress, for example? So I think this whole point, I think the DG made that earlier, as did the Deputy Minister. This aspect of having timely quality data on a regular basis at regular intervals is crucial. As the UN, we are here to support. We are here to partner with the government. So we support on capacity. We support on maybe helping the government to have new technology. For example, this last census was a fully digital census. It means that this data is now available to the government. It's all on a cloud. It's not paper-based. And those are the kinds of innovations that we as partners can help bring to the government. But really, this is a process that is owned and led by the government, including the utilization of this data.
Yeah. Minister, you want to chip in?
Yes, I would just want to go back to respond to the issue of international data being something that Liberian people believe in. And sometimes you need to be reading it as well, because, for example, people think that the macroeconomic data in Liberia is a projection from the IMF. And realistically, the reason why even the IMF data, you see, they will say Liberian Authority and the International Monetary Fund.
That's the source.
That's the source. So meaning that it is actually done by Liberian Authority, Ministry of Finance, Central Bank, the latest, and all the economic institutions collecting data, and that can be used for projection of the number. Therefore, we have to take ownership of that. The only thing that I want to say here to Liberians is that because of limited access to information across the country, that's why this national planning process, we are now thinking that, look, instead of just looking at the national development plan, let's do the county development plan. And it will help us to do more inclusive development and inclusive data collection. The county service center, we want to know how many people access it. We want to know in terms of health centers in the various counties, how many people are accessing health, how many people are accessing education. From 2024, by 2029, how many people have actually improved their living standard. And therefore, that's the focus of the data collection. So we're not going to say it is UN data or it's a IMF data, it's a World Bank data, it's actually the country's data. One thing that we also have to do as a country, and we are planning to do now, is to ensure that every agency will have its own statistical collection system, and that itself will feed into the progress that we make along the way, as the UNFPA director was saying. So we want to know for education, we want to look at the dropout rate, we want to know the enrollment rate, and the school census will also be informing us on that. So along the way, these are the things that we are doing. So the ownership is something we have to take over it, we got to show to the public so that they can participate in it.
Yeah, and the central system of all of the data collectors should be leges. For example, if the Ministry of Education collects its data, they should be able to share with leges, and leges share with the Department of Development Planning to inform policy makers. But there are a couple of questions here, and I want us to make sense of them. From this brief, it says here, World Population Day 2024 offers countries, societies, and policy makers the chance not just to celebrate improvements in information gathering and analysis, but also to ask themselves, are we asking the right questions? Is our data collection safe for all people? Who is still going unaccounted and unaccounted for? Accounted and unaccounted for? All these questions. Are we missing out on people in our data collection?
One of the things we can say yes, because I mentioned access. There are areas in terms of data collection in this country where some people are in the rural area, rural connection, and all of these things. These are things that we need to be very realistic when we are doing our population projection. So we want to make sure that every human being in Liberia is counted in the process. That's why when you do census, you give additional, we have 10 years to do another census. During the period, inter-census period, you will have to also do other surveys that inform you. So yes, those who are left out can be captured. Like he's talking about the HRES, and we also have the what we call demographic health survey. We have the agricultural survey. All of these things are actually important in the planning process, in our national development process.
Yep. Peter, you want to say something about these questions as well? Are we missing out on certain group of our society in our data collection effort?
I actually think that with this last, and I keep coming back to the last census because it was digital. I think the census had a 97% coverage, which means that using technology, I think, enabled the government to reach many more Liberians that they have been able to in the past. And this we are seeing across countries. It's not just in Liberia. So I think with the advent of technology, this whole issue of inclusion, we are gradually able to reach out to more and more people, right? This is something that we see. So I think it is important for us to be mindful about, are we leaving people behind in the inclusion of data process? But I think we need more analysis. For example, as I mentioned earlier, if you look at complexity. So people who live with disabilities, do we have sufficient data on them? Perhaps that is where we need to do a little bit more in-depth analysis. I think when you're even looking at people living with disabilities, to have disaggregated data on the basis of gender is important. There are key population groups. I think, for example, I mentioned children living in street situations, or young people who are using and abusing substances, who we know are living on the fringes of society. I think these are some groups that do come to mind where we probably need more data to make sure that they're part of the process. In UNFPA, we say, because we are a data-driven organization, that if you are not counted, as in counted physically, you will not count, or you may not count. So for me to feel as an individual that I am counted, that the government is thinking of me, the country is thinking of me, I have to be included. I have to be counted in the process. So yes, I believe that there is definitely more improvements to be made. I think one of the things we've again been discussing is to strengthen the civil registration and vital statistics systems. Birth registrations have significantly improved in Liberia. I think we need to focus on death registrations as well. And through the CRVS, it's possible to get more routine and timely data, which really will help the country to make sure that from an inclusion perspective, we're able to be getting the data that we need.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. If you look at, your question was whether significant components of the population have been left out.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not just being left out in terms of coverage. Sometimes people can be left out in terms of analysis. There are minimum of 9 different prohibited grounds for discrimination. Like she mentioned, disability. We have gender. We have rural and urban disparities. If you're doing population analysis, you should be able to clearly spell out these various groups in the population, because national development planning processes must be able to target them. So doing any form of socioeconomic analysis and not critically looking at that's a major problem. For instance, we have roughly around 55% of Liberians currently living in urban areas. It has been increasing since 1962. It's a serious case, because it means if you don't understand that our country is gradually getting more urban, you might not be able to tailor up national development policies that would target people living in the urban metropolis. And this has a serious implication on agricultural production and so forth. Now, we have about 35% of our people who have not attained any form of education. We need to target that particular group of people. So definitely, it is not just looking at coverage, because outside of the census, what we usually do is survey data collection, and survey data collection involves survey sampling. And sampling is actually taking a sample of the population and rendering inferences. So if you don't adequately do sampling of the population, you don't adequately analyze data, obviously your result will be spurious enough to affect the policies that will be formulated.
Sure.
Yes. So
Yeah.
So definitely we are not only looking at coverage, but the quality of the analysis
and the accuracy of it.
The accuracy of the analysis and the inclusivity of the analysis.
Yeah. If you just join us, you're listening to the Super Morning Show this morning. I have my guest, Deputy Minister for Economic Management at the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning, Depu Zuo. Mr. Richard Gafwan is the Director General of the Liberia Institute of Statistics and Geoinformation Services, LAGES. And Madam Bidisha Pila is the resident representative of UNFPA Liberia. We will take calls later on, but there is something particular issue that undermines data collection. As my research shows that there is no data protection law in Liberia. No specific national data protection agency or authority exists in Liberia, besides a broad statement in the Liberian Constitution that no person shall be subjected to interference with his or her privacy of person, family, home, or correspondence, except by order of a court or competent jurisdiction. This alone, the fact that we don't have data protection law, may prevent somebody from revealing, making available their personal data. Isn't that the fact? As we make sense of trying to collect data to inform policymakers and national development. Peter, is it not the fact? Does that not undermine data collection? The fact that we don't have data protection law in Liberia.
So, as per my information, and I'm looking to the DG and the minister, I do think that there is a List Act which has actually, which has provisions for data protection within it. So, for example, it's not that the raw data that is collected is released and made available to everyone. It is governed by the List Act. It's owned by the government. It's not that anyone can really sort of use that. So I think that's one aspect, and which I will look to the DG to maybe provide more clarity on. But in general, I think it is important that a country does have a Data Protection Act. I think very often you do come across this debate of, from an individual's point of view, if I am providing data, is my data safe? And with the advent of technology, I think that there are more and more questions that are coming, that are coming up around how even private companies are using the data that we have on our mobile phones. If we are doing an internet search, how our, AI is really capturing the patterns of our, what we are researching and what sort of information we are seeking. So I think globally, definitely, it's not just for Liberia. I think globally there really is a big discussion on the use of technology as technology progresses to ensure that there are enough rules, there is enough regulatory frameworks that are put around both for private sector and in the public space for data to be used in a responsible manner, for the average person, the citizen's privacy to be protected, and for the data not to be misused. Yes. So I definitely think that that's something that is very important. And at UNFPA as well, given that we are the data agency, we are working, including with many companies, on responsible use of data and technology. We are working, for example, on with private sector companies on how do you now tackle what we are seeing of more and more increase of gender-based violence using technology. Right? And how do you tackle that? So I think as technology progresses, there is a good side to it, but there is also this side to it that we all need to be looking at. And yes, I would say definitely a data protection law is required for every country, for both the government, but also the private sector.
Yeah. And when we talk about data protection law, it is beyond the circumference of the authority of legislatures, because data protection, nowadays, a lot of people use mobile phones. Most people might be concerned about the security of the data on their electronic gadgets. So the Liberia Telecommunication Agency, or LTA rather, and Ministry of Information might want to be interested in that. Legis on her own has her own laws based upon her Act of 2004 on the protection of the data that is being collected, because we are not to release personal information of people. So the records that have been collected must be confidential. Equally, for censuses, there is a census law that tend to mandate the people to respond to the census enumerators. But beyond the census, doing surveys
Also, response to enumerators is mandatory.
definitely is in the census law.
Okay.
But beyond that, during time of surveys, we use our consent forms, and it is not ethical to compel people during times of our various surveys to compel people to respond, because there are times that when you compel people to respond to certain data collection tools, they tend to skew the analysis and give you
Wrong information.
wrong information.
Yeah.
So cognizant of that, that is the reason why that most of our surveys tend to have our informed consent section, that people must consent. For instance, you have most of our surveys, people sitting for over 1 hour, sometimes, or 1 hour 30 minutes. They must consent. They must agree. You cannot force them, because when you force them to respond to your questionnaire, definitely the very intent for collecting data will be defeated. Because at the end, you want data to be of quality. That data should be correct.
Yeah.
But beyond that, on our own allegations, there is a data protection clause in our act that compels all the individuals that are involved in data compilation to not release personal information of people.
Okay.
Yeah.
Minister?
Yes, I think what you're talking about in terms of data protection is something very much important. Currently, we are in a process as a government working with World Bank to see in terms of strategic engagement and policy on internet digitization process in terms of data protection, and that strategy is one of the main component of the project to look at, so that the vulnerability is one thing in terms of the internet data collection. So the national strategy is actually been one of the focus area in our project, and we have to hire a consultant to do the work for the country, because like the UNFPA said, it's important. But every country, even though you have the right to publish, but who access your information and how they utilize your information is another thing. And therefore, the government, as we go towards internet usage, internet penetration, we need to make sure that we have a law in place and strategy that will be able to guard and protect each citizen.
Yeah. It will also increase compliance, because if you come to me, I have no evidence that you can protect my data. I may shy away from you and showing you, from releasing my personal data. But let's take calls. Call us on 07705818886, 07705818886, and be live. This is the Super Morning Show on ELBC. My name is Fafli Kamara. You can call us on. As we are with the call, Peter, you want to update us about tomorrow's program, how it's going to be like? Where exactly?
Yes, absolutely. It's a very exciting program. As I said, given the theme of this year's World Population Day, right? So it's about inclusive data for resilient development. So it's actually a program which is being led by the Ministry of Finance and Development Planning. We are supporting them. LISGIS is very much involved. But what is wonderful is that we have young people at the heart of this program. So there will be lots of young voices tomorrow. There will be a lot of young voices who come from different groups, who are sometimes marginalized and left out, bringing their perspectives. And it's going to be like an intergenerational dialogue. So we will, of course, have the ministry, we'll have the government there, we'll have the DG of LISGIS and his team there talking about the data trends. We'll have the Honorable Vice President preside over this. We'll have development partners, civil society, UN agencies, everyone. But the conversation will really be led by young people. So it's going to be very exciting. It starts at 11 a.m. tomorrow at the Ministerial Complex. And we hope that as many people as possible can join us. I believe it is going to be live streamed as well, although I'm not sure of the channel it will be. So even for those who cannot be in the room, they can follow the discussions.
Okay, let's hear from this caller. Good morning. Oh, we lost you. But call us back on 0770581886. 0770581886. Let's hear from you. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning, what's your name?
Family, this is S. Lauren Mogo, calling from the Macande to be solution where this is on.
Yeah, let's hear you, Lawrence.
Family, just a bit still get still warning for what they are saying. Family, that's what they are getting so it's not leading to even be invited to the legislature so that they can tell how many populations where are going you know, we can look at how this is like we don't even know the total population of the
Okay.
it's like I was saying, the has gone there to help us know we are looking at population. Then you look at the development, it's not challenging. So please don't see the when Andra was saying that it's not because you are saying it's not very careful.
Okay.
Really in support of this junior university model.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this question is for you, Mr. Gafan. You wants to know each county, for example, the population of that county, and then in the national population, the conscious population as we speak. Because they said they don't know, how many population Lofa has, born and all that. I think you'll be able to answer that. Morning, morning, good morning,
Good morning.
good morning. What's the name? Good morning. What's the name? Okay, let's hear from this person. Good morning.
Thank you, Brother Bradley. Good morning and to your guests in studio.
Yeah, let's hear you.
My name is Muslim Peru, and I come from around the Kapitan district. Let me appreciate the guests in studio, but I have this concern. The issue of our data collection. This long time when latest had the census, I have fewer issues. Take for example like district two. Many of the citizens have fought for district two being divided because I think this is one of the largest districts in Mosolado. So we thought that this district had been divided into two. But even to my home, where I live, I will not count, I will not capture by latest. So I'm getting a bit confused.
Why were you not captured? Why were you not captured?
I was not in my entire neighborhood with no.
Were you available? Were you available when the enumerators give me your community?
Of course, Mr. Bobby, I'm saying this to you. In my entire neighborhood, we have close to let's say 6 to 7 houses in my neighborhood. Nobody politics came around to even do our own part of the census. So I got concerned, but I've not had an opportunity to have a redress. So I hope your can just throw light on the concerns.
Okay, we'll take this last caller. Good morning. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, sir.
Good morning. Go ahead quickly. What's the name?
Thank you. My name is Bia Bobby Addison. I have a recommendation to your guests. I want to work with Search for Common Ground Talking Drum Studio, and these are some of the things that we did: data collection and other stuff. Part of our thematic issues we touch as correspondents across the country. So I recommend that you talk about the media. Work along with the community radio stations, go in partnership with them, and absolutely you have your work done perfectly to include the state radio in your BC correspondence. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's a recommendation. Yeah, but Mr. Gafon, like a call from Lofa that they don't know the population of the country, the population of their county, and somebody, for example, who missed out on the census, can they be counted for? Can they come to the office at latest and be counted? That kind of situation.
Yeah, so let me deal with the last part, then I can
Mm.
discuss the rest. Yes, Mr. Bobby Addison, right? You talk about dissemination of the census result through community radio stations. And in my previous statement, I talked about that we will not just collect the data, but we have to disseminate the data
Mm.
in the various vernacular of our people so that they can understand the type of data and what the data tend to say about them. Uh, for my brother from Lofa, I'm also from Lofa, and The overall census of 2022 placed the Liberian population at 5.2 million. I am very cognizant about various concerns. Various concerns about the coverage of the census, like what my brother was talking about, not being counted. There have been many cases like that. It is based upon that since I took over as the Director General of Legislature, we have embarked upon rigorous validation of the census data. Because we are aware that beyond what technicians might think, there might be public perception about the result. So we currently did the first phase of the validation, and as I said, there will be an overall evaluation of the census process by independent demographers. That evaluation is like an audit. The audit will give us the final direction as to the overarching quality of the census. Now, because I've been having a series of engagement not only with the public but even members of the legislature, because they are very much concerned about using the current census data for electoral boundary demarcation. Based upon the fact that we are going through stages of vetting and evaluation of the data, that's the reason why we inform them that after the final post-census evaluation, we will come to the legislature to inform the Liberian people the direction we are going to go. We are cognizant about the cost of the census. We are also cognizant about the huge investment placed in the census. Be that as it may, the next 5 years to 10 years, the census data is an indispensable component of development planning. And any disparity in the result, if the results tend to have serious issues when it comes to data quality, it's going to affect our projection. It's going to affect our planning processes. So we currently have the results disaggregated by county. They are currently on our website. However, those results are provisional results. We are finalizing the vetting of the data, and after the final evaluation, we're going to release it to the public if we are sufficiently confident in its quality. Even if we are not totally confident in its quality, we're going to inform about the extent of the quality of the data and to what extent it can be used by our brothers at Broad Street in terms of Ministry of Finance and Development Planning for development planning purposes. Because the census have received series of calls. In fact, whenever we go to discuss about leases, the issue about the census is the dominant question. I was not a legist then, but I'm aware of that. So be in the driver's seat now. It means we have to critically assess the data to make sure that everything about the result can be of confidence for our people to use it for national development planning.
Okay, let's hold you there, Mr. Gafwan. Thank you very much. That will be your parting comments. I come to you, Deputy Minister. So.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. We want to say thank you to UNFPA for the enormous support we've been giving to Liberia. And I also want to say thank you to our listener out there for the time. What we want to do is to encourage you to be a part of the inclusive development of Liberia as we go through the development process. Every citizen must see this as part of their responsibility to work with us and to ensure that we succeed as a country. And the arrest agenda is very much key as we do in the planning process. We want to take into consideration all data aspects that have to do with the agriculture sector, role, infrastructure, the rule of law. We want to have data to inform us to know the number of cases adjudicated by courts. These are very much important for us as we do the planning process, even in terms of our tourism sector. Let's see what the facility and other opportunity we have in the country. So it's very much important. We want for the UNFPA to guide and help the census process, as the DG mentioned, so we can show that there's confidence level in the data so that Liberian people can use it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pilar, your parting comments briefly.
So thank you very much, firstly, for allowing us to have a whole hour to engage with Liberians on the importance and significance of World Population Day, because population matters for every citizen of Liberia. We, in turn, are very grateful to the government of Liberia for the excellent partnership we have with all the ministries that we work with under the leadership of President Bokai. Of course, on the AAID. We are here to support the government of Liberia and Liberians in general, and we will continue to be here to make sure that every pregnancy is wanted, every childbirth is safe, and every young person's potential in Liberia is fulfilled.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, they've been my guests from the Ministry of Finance, Legis, and UNFPA. My name is Vafle Kamara. Next up is Education.